there, friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. My name is Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is a short show that I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game, a top 10 list, or some other board game, usually related topic, whatever happens to be on my mind. Well, this week, I think I mentioned I was going to do Iridia, but I still need to keep going with that one before I can finalize my thoughts on it. So I decided to talk about another great game. Actually, ironically, on Monday, I was writing in my journal, and I had noted that in my journal I had said, I tried Wormspan for the first time today. Well, exactly 1 year later, my copy of Finspan arrived, and I tried it. So it was the same day, just a year later. That's nice how those coincidences sometimes work out. So Finspan was a game that I tried for the first time on the Dice Tower cruise. They had announced, Stonemaier Games had announced it, and then the Dice Tower people had their copy ready to go right there. The second it was announced, it was set up and on the table, so we were able to try it. In fact, Victor and I were some of the first to try it on that trip. I picked up the rules, we sat down and read it. We thought, well, we know how to play Wingspan. How different can this be? And we had a good time with it. So now my copy has come, and I've played it a few more times, and I still have not tried the solo. I'm only talking about the multiplayer version, but I think I'm ready to talk about it because I have some thoughts. So what is it about? Well, Finspan is the third in a series of, currently 3 games. Wingspan, Wormspan, and now Finspan. Wingspan was a game about collecting birds and putting them in habitats and feeding them and getting points from them and completing goals. Wormspan took the same kind of format and put dragons over, a nice dragon overlay, and changed up the way that things worked a little bit, streamlined some of the food gathering, and sort of gave you a different kind of way that you would develop these areas for the dragons. And then Finspan now is the third version. It is all about fish. And it's fish everywhere. There's a lot of nightmarish looking fish in there, and some fish that you might recognize. So, it's really, theme-wise, it's, hey, there are fish. There's a lot of fish in the sea. So there's not a whole lot there thematically, but you are trying to gather fish. You're trying to discover them, I guess, in your habitat, and then score as many points as possible after 4 rounds of the game. So how does it work? Well, let's open up the pictures here. If I'm successful, I'm always wondering if I will be. Here we go. So here you can see a picture of the cover. Finspan is, and again, it's hard to talk about it without talking about the other games, but basically you're going to have this board. And this board is your habitat, and you'll see that it has 3 kind of rows, or 3 columns, I guess. I guess that's what they're called. 3 columns, and can I make this bigger? I don't know if I can. I'd love to. Maybe, no, that just moves things around. Okay, yeah, I guess I'm going to be up there. Anyway, it's got 3 columns, and you've got fish, and each fish, if we zoom way in here, you can see that each fish has a cost up in the top, and it's got a habitat it wants to live in. So there's 3 areas. There's the daylight, the twilight, and the dead of night rows, I guess. and then it has a bonus that it'll give you when you play it. It has some stats. It has some points. And so on your turn, you're going to take one of essentially 2 actions. The first action you could do is you can play a fish. So you'll select a fish, you'll pay its cost, and the cost is, in this game, usually some combination of cards that you discard, eggs that you spend from your board, or there's these other small fish that are called young that you spend as well. And sometimes there's other costs, but those tend to be the most common ones. And you're just going to play it where it can go. So you'll put it in the zones it can go in, and some of them have a color band that say, well, this one has to be in the green column or the purple column or the blue column. You're going to put it somewhere where it goes. If it has an instant effect, you're going to do it, like this when played. Otherwise, it will hang around there, hopefully, until the end of the game. At the end of the game, if it's still face up on your board, you'll score the points for it. There's also end game abilities, and some when activated abilities, which we'll talk about now. So if you do an activation turn, you're going to take one of your little divers and you're going to start them at the top. And for each area, if there's at least one fish in that zone, you're going to activate whatever that zone gives you. Plus, if you go over any fish that have a when activated effect, you're going to activate it. Now, the activation effects really are some combination of 4 or 5 different things with a couple of outliers. It's going to be drawing cards from your discard pile, laying eggs. Each fish can hold an egg. And my version, I have these nice little gelatinous eggs. Or you can hatch an egg, which means you turn it over and there's a fish on the other side. Or you can move these fish around with this sort of arrow thing, and you're trying to get these small fish in groups of 3, and if you do, they morph into a school, which is worth a bunch of bonus points. So you're going to do kind of one of those. You've got 6 divers. Those divers are kind of your action markers. And after 6 rounds, you're going to look and see what the end of round scoring thing is. You'll score it, and then you'll set up for the next. Well, you're ready for the next round, and you just keep going until the game is over. So you've got 24 turns really in the game. Then you'll do any end of game scoring, end of game bonus actions and scoring, and then you'll total up all your stuff. Your young and eggs are worth a point each. Your fish are worth their point value. And other things are going to be worth what they're worth, plus those schools, the sort of groupings of the small fish, are going to be worth 6 points, which is a lot. Now, the one other thing I'd mention is when you play a fish, you can either play it on an empty space or an occupied space. And the game comes with a couple of fish pre-printed on there. But when you play it, you're going to see these fish have a different size. So if you wanted to put it on an occupied space, that's fine. The fish you're playing just has to be bigger than the one it goes on top of. And at the end of the game, each fish that has been eaten by a bigger fish is going to be worth an extra point as well. It's kind of like tucked cards in the other 2 games. Anyway, that's kind of it. It's not a complicated game rules-wise, but let's talk about what's great about this game and what's less great. So what makes it special? Well, and this game, unfortunately, is going to have to be compared to Wingspan and Wormspan. What makes this special is it is definitely the most beginner-friendly of the 3. It does not have any of the... So, in Wingspan, there was this dice tower that had dice, and you could pick the food, a specific food type, and there were some combinations of food types. And there was an action that got you food. There really isn't that concept here. In Wormspan, there was a cave that sort of was dedicated to food. In this one, we've really done away with the concept of food. There's really just eggs, these little fish tokens, and cards in your hand, and because of that, it takes away a layer of planning from the game. You don't have to think, okay, how am I going to get the right food at the right time? Can I exchange 2? You could exchange 2 for 1 in the old game. Here, you don't need to do that because there is no food. And I actually really like that. I think that makes it so you can just jump into the game and it doesn't sort of add an extra layer of analysis on for players who may be learning. I'll say I've taught this to people who don't play games regularly, and they've picked it up really well. It's very beginner friendly. What else makes it special? It's sort of the kind of same engine building aspect that you would find with Wingspan or with Wormspan, right? You're playing cards that are going to make your sort of gather actions more powerful. In Wingspan, that was going to be when you did the lay eggs action. Okay, here we go. Blah, 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 lay eggs, and I activate all of the birds that are over in my area from right to left. In Wormspan, I could take an explore cave action, and then based upon how many dragons I have, my action got stronger and stronger. And I could activate sort of these splashy effects from all the dragons. In this one, it's pretty easy. There's not going to be a mega turn like there would be, like you'd set up a mega turn in Wingspan or Wormspan. In this one, it's pretty, it's an aspect of and a bunch I can move a bunch just off straightforward and on that. What else makes it special? The artwork's really good. It's it's fish. and they're colorful, and the cards are well laid out so that there's not, a lot of work to figure out how are we going to play this game. But it looks good. It looks good on the table. The boards are vertical, and that seems like a small thing, but what that does is it saves a lot of space. In fact, this game is very space friendly, table friendly. You could set up a 5-player game on a normal table. Now, I don't think you should ever play this 5-player because most games are terrible 5-player, and I'm sure this one is too. But if you wanted to, you could, and it wouldn't be a space issue. It's really interesting, right? We've kind of turned, because the other two games had these horizontal boards, and so, and then there was other space for a bunch of other boards to store various things, and none of that's here. So it's very space friendly as well. It's also fast. What does the box say? It says 45 to 60 minutes. That's a long game. I think half an hour is probably good with this, especially at 2 or 3 players. It's just turn after turn after turn. Sometimes you'll have a slightly longer one, but it's rare. It's just a really good, punchy, fast game that gives you everything the other two games give you. So yeah, and the rules are really clear. So where's the but? Well, it's not as splashy as the other two games. The effects in this game are going to be largely just the same thing that you kind of have printed on your board. It's not like, I played a game of Wormspan last night as well, just sort of for comparison. And it was like, okay, this dragon does something amazing, and I want to activate it as often as possible, right? Turn an egg in and get 2 resources of my choice. To draw the top card and play it for free, whatever it happens to be. Move up on this track. It was, you really, the dragons that you were playing really sometimes informed your strategy because the effects that they could give you were sometimes really amazing. In this one, those when activated effects are really just going to be draw a card, tuck a card under if it's smaller than your fish, lay an egg, hatch an egg, move a fish around. They're really kind of basic. And, while that's good, it makes it great for new players. If you're wanting something with a little bit more bite, it might not be here. Now, I'm not going to say that's a major negative. I actually think for the right audience, that's going to be a positive. But it's just not as splashy. The cards are kind of variations on each other than the artwork and the scoring. And there are some weird ones, right? There's going to be, something like play a card at the end of the game in your bottom row or things like that are a little, require or a little bit more exciting. And there's a lot of cards in this game that affect other players as well. Always positively, but, sometimes you might think, oh, I want to play this card, but I don't want to give somebody an egg every time I activate it. So, if you don't like that, if you want to sort of have your own solo experience, this might not be it for you. So I think those are kind of my negatives, and those are real negatives, but they're not huge negatives. Also, I don't know that there are enough of the end of round goals. I feel like those are a little bit more constrained. I was looking at them yesterday when we were playing. I set it up, and I'm like, okay, there's one that's like, score all the young you have, and then there's score every 2 young you have, score every 3, or something like that. They were just sort of very small variations on each other. And you kind of put them out. There's like a box for round 1, a box for round 2, and a box for round 3. And there's only certain ones that can go in each one. And I found, especially Wingspan had some kind of wild and crazy end of round goals by the 3rd expansion, which is I think we've had 3 expansions for that one. 4. There's 4, and some of them were kind of wild, and there were a lot more. There's a lot more variety. And in this one, the goals I think will feel kind of samey. Also, and this is really the only strong but I have, because that one, okay, are you going to play it with the same people all the time? Maybe not. This one, though, the way you record your score, there's no way to keep track of your in the game score, the scoring for each round. You have to write it down on a score sheet, which is kind of annoying, right? It means you're going to have to keep a pen around. If you don't have one, if you're on the go, that'll make it difficult. And so I wish that this one had Like the other games had a score track where you could put a little marker out on there. Now, in this one, of course, we've done away with all those markers. We've done away with all those boards. But that comes at the cost of you needing to have a pen on hand to write things down. Not the end of the world. Most places will have one. Most people will have one at home, which is and where I play at home mostly. There are plenty of pens, but but that's a negative. I wish there were an inherent way to keep track of score between rounds in the game. Maybe if you're going to travel with it, put a bunch of coins in it or something. I don't know. Something small. It's never going to be a ton of points, but whatever it happens to be. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the game. So where do I come out? Well, first of all, I still need to try it solo. I liked Wingspan solo a lot. I love Wormspan solo. I don't know how I'll feel about this one. I hope it's great. So far, the other two are promising. I might come back and report on that at some point. I won't do a whole episode about it. But as a 2 or 3 player game, which are the only counts I've played, this is a 9 out of 10. This is great. I've said some things about how the other games have a little bit more to them, a little bit more punch, but this one might be my favorite of the 3. And the reason for that is, like I said earlier on, it's just so easy to get into. This is one I can set up and play. There's not a whole lot of setup. The rules teaches you do one of 2 things on your turn and you're done. There's not a lot of weirdness, and it feels like it's been streamlined, but not to the point where it feels like it's missing anything. It's streamlined to the point where you could say, you like fish, or you want to try a game, a sort of a modern style board game. This is one. Let me show it to you. You're going to love it. And I've had that experience with everyone I've played it with so far. Everyone's really enjoyed it. It's been like, oh, that was fun. Let's try that again. And that's kind of what you're wanting in a game. And I keep thinking about it. So, and I honestly think, I didn't check what my ratings for Wingspan and Wormspan were. They were probably also a 9 out of 10. They were both really good, and I liked them both a lot. Yeah, they're both 9. Well, Wormspan is a 9, and Wingspan I'd be surprised if it weren't a 9. So they're all 3 9s out of 10. But I think this one is like 9 plus, 9 prime, because I think I like it just a little bit more. This is one, the other 2 I might not give as a gift. This one I will, because I really think anyone can play this game, and anyone can really enjoy it and feel like they're competitive, and that's a lot. That's great for a game. So anyway, I've said my piece. Finspan is an absolute winner. Definitely one that I think you can own even if you have the other 2. And that's another thing I guess I should say. Wormspan is my go-to, has been my go-to for someone who just wants to play the game. I've put all the expansions in on Wingspan, and that really adds a lot of layers of complication to it. I'd only play it with certain people at this point. Plus, it has a deck of cards that's that big. This one, it's small, it's light, it's one I could take with me. It's fast, it's fun, and I just think it is a great example of looking at a game and saying, well, what can we remove without changing the fun? And everything that's been taken out, I'm like, well, I don't actually miss this. Other than some of the effects, but like the resources, the dice, all that stuff, I don't need it. So I hope this one will be well supported. I hope it'll get an expansion or 2 that adds, a few more fish, maybe a few more slightly splashier effects, and a few more of those kind of end of round goals, and then this one will be golden. As it is, it's a 9 out of 10. It's one that I highly recommend to just about anyone who enjoys the thought of collecting fish or is just looking for a good entry level but satisfying engine building style game. Anyway, that's it for this round. I think I've probably talked for about as much time as it would take to play a game of Finspan. So I guess I better end it here. So I'm going to wish you safe travels, courage when you need it, and I'm going to hope to see you back again soon, hopefully next week, for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.